the lake town of Willow Ridge was always quiet. It was the kind of place where people woke up early, drank coffee on their porches, and waved at neighbors without saying much. Life moved slowly there, except when Karen, the HOA president, decided it should not. Karen was not just any HOA president. She was the type who measured grass with a ruler, counted how many cars each house had, and kept a notebook of every tiny violation. She walked around the neighborhood like she owned all of it, even though she only owned a 2-bedroom house with peeling paint on the backside, something she pretended nobody noticed. To Karen, rules were power. And nothing made her angrier than someone she could not control. So the day she heard that a man named Evan Brooks had bought the old lake cabin for only $5, she almost dropped her coffee. That broken box? That tiny rotten thing, she shouted to her friend Linda. $5 is too much for that trash. Who would waste money on it? She laughed so loud that 2 ducks near the lake flew away. She didn't stop laughing for almost a minute, wiping tears from her eyes. That place is ugly. And if he thinks he's going to fix it, he's wrong. I will not allow that mess in my neighborhood. Karen said the word my like she had built the town herself. What she didn't know was this. Evan had already planned something much bigger than she could imagine. The arrival. That evening, the townspeople noticed a small gray car stopping in front of the cabin. Out stepped Evan, quiet, calm, simple clothes, no flashy style. He looked like someone who minded his own business. He walked around the old cabin slowly, like he was studying it. The cabin was almost falling apart. The roof sagged. The windows rattled. The wood looked like it would collapse if someone breathed too hard. The place looked more like a haunted shed than a home. But Evan didn't seem upset. He touched the wooden walls gently, like they meant something. Then he smiled. A small, private smile. The kind of smile you only see when someone knows a secret. Karen, watching from her porch with binoculars, felt annoyed. Why is he smiling? That cabin is a disaster. She marched down the road, pretending she was just taking a walk, though everyone knew she was spying. First contact. Hello, she called out loudly. I'm Karen, HOA president. Evan turned politely. Nice to meet you. Karen didn't waste time. You know, she said, tapping her foot, this cabin is very old. Very unsafe. I'm not sure you'll be allowed to do anything with it. Evan nodded calmly. I understand. Karen blinked. Usually people argued, panicked, or at least explained themselves. But Evan didn't. He just smiled kindly. Anyway, Karen continued, I expect you to follow all HOA rules. Evan tilted his head slightly. Yes. Of course. That was it. He didn't promise anything. Didn't ask questions. Didn't seem worried. It bothered Karen more than if he had shouted at her. She walked away muttering, we will see about him. Oh yes, we will. Something strange begins. Later that night, around midnight, a truck with no company logo drove quietly to the cabin. Its headlights were dimmed. 3 men stepped out carrying long metal boxes and rolled up documents. Karen, who often sat by her window just checking things, saw them. What on earth, she whispered, pulling out her binoculars again. The men helped Evan unload the boxes. They opened one box, and something inside glowed faintly, maybe lights, maybe instruments. The men worked silently, almost professionally, like they had done this many times before. Karen wrote everything in her notebook. Suspicious midnight activity. Unmarked truck. Unknown men. Possible violation of HOA night noise rule. She couldn't sleep the whole night. Her mind kept circling around one thought. What is he hiding? The town starts talking. By morning, rumors had spread. He's probably a criminal, one neighbor whispered. He's building a secret bunker, another said. No, an old fisherman insisted, he's a treasure hunter. I swear he had metal detectors. But nobody knew the truth. Nobody except Evan. And he wasn't talking. All he did was work quietly, cleaning the front porch, clearing the weeds, measuring the walls. He took notes in a small book, never letting anyone see the pages. Karen hated that. She needed information. She needed control. And she needed to make sure Evan failed before he did something against HOA standards. A warning letter. By the next day, she had already written the first official HOA warning letter. She marched down to the cabin with it in her hand, feeling powerful. Evan opened the door gently when she knocked. "This is for you," Karen said sharply. "You are already in violation of several HOA guidelines." He took the letter, read it once, then nodded. "Thank you for informing me." That was it. No fear. No confusion. Nothing. Karen almost exploded. Why wasn't he reacting? She walked away fuming, whispering, "He thinks he's clever. But he won't fool me." The mystery deepens. That night, Karen kept watch again. And once more, unusual things happened. Another truck came. This one carried long wooden poles and strange equipment. The men used small lights, careful not to be seen. Karen gasped. "He's planning something big," she whispered. "And I will find out what." But even she could feel something different in the air. The quiet lake, the cool wind, the soft sound of water, all of it felt like it was waiting for something. Something big. Something that would change everything in Willow Ridge. And right before the truck left, Evan stepped outside alone. He stood at the edge of the lake, holding a small metal box. The moonlight reflected on his face as he whispered something to himself. Karen couldn't hear the words, but the look on his face sent a shiver down her spine. It was the look of a man who knew exactly what he was doing. The look of someone who wasn't afraid of the HOA. The look of someone who had a plan. A plan that was only just beginning. Morning arrived slowly over Willow Ridge. The lake was still, the sky soft and pale. Birds were the only ones awake except for two people, Evan, who was already working, and Karen, who had barely slept because she was too busy spying. From her kitchen window, Karen watched Evan carry tools around the yard with calm focus. He moved with a strange confidence, as if he already knew every nail, every board, and every hidden problem in the cabin. He didn't hesitate. He didn't stop to think. It was like the cabin belonged to him for years. This bothered Karen more than anything. "How can someone be so calm?" she muttered as she poured her coffee. "He just bought the place. He shouldn't look this comfortable." But Evan did. He worked with slow, steady movements. He removed rotten boards, measured broken beams, and stacked old wood neatly beside the cabin. Nothing about him said beginner. He worked like a man who had rebuilt half the world. Karen wrote in her notebook. "He is hiding something. Strange visitors." Around noon, a small white van stopped near the cabin. No logo. No company name. Just plain white. 3 people stepped out, 2 men, 1 woman wearing matching gray jackets. They didn't look like normal construction workers. They carried tablets, laser measuring tools, and a long cylindrical device that hummed quietly. Karen nearly choked on her drink. "These aren't workers, these are specialists," she whispered. The woman walked up to Evan, shook his hand, then the group began scanning the ground around the cabin. They placed small orange markers in the soil. They took depth readings. They pointed sensors toward the lake. They whispered numbers to each other. Evan simply observed, nodding. Karen's jaw dropped. What kind of project needs this kind of equipment? This is not normal home repair. She pulled out her phone to take pictures, but the camera made a loud click. One of the men turned toward her. Karen ducked behind her curtains so fast she hit her head. But when she peeked again, Evan was looking in her direction, smiling. Not a friendly smile. A knowing smile. As if he could see right through her curtains. Right through her. Karen felt her heart jump. She slammed her curtains shut. Rumors grow. By afternoon, the whole town was talking. I heard he's building a research lab, one shopkeeper said. No, replied a fisherman. He's draining the lake and hiding something under it. My cousin says he was in the military, another added. Top secret stuff. Everyone had a theory. No one had facts. Except maybe Karen, who was certain of only one thing. Evan was dangerous to her control. She imagined him finishing the cabin, making it beautiful, and embarrassing the HOA. People would admire him. They'd stop listening to her. She couldn't allow that. So she walked over again, pretending she needed to check something. Karen vs. Evan, round 2. Evan was kneeling by the porch, hammering a new board into place. He looked up when Karen approached. Good afternoon, he said politely. Karen forced a smile. I just wanted to check if you received the warning letter. Yes, Evan said. I read it carefully. And I'm working within the rules, he replied calmly. Karen blinked. No, you're not. I saw trucks. I saw strangers. You must tell me what you're doing. The HOA needs full information. Evan wiped dust from his hands. His expression stayed relaxed, but there was something behind his eyes, something sharp and unreadable. Karen, he said softly, with respect, you don't need to worry. Wrong answer. Karen's face turned red. I have to worry. It's my job. I can't have unauthorized projects in this community. Evan stood up. He wasn't tall, but something about him made Karen step back. Maybe it was confidence. Maybe it was the feeling that he knew more than anyone else. You'll know everything, he said, when the time is right. Karen froze. What did that mean? What time? Right for who? Why couldn't he just answer clearly? She rushed away, shaking with frustration. The night disturbance. That night, something even stranger happened. Karen woke up suddenly. A low, distant sound vibrated through the ground. Not loud, just enough to feel. Like a deep hum. Like something shifting underground. She stood up and went to her window. The lake looked normal, calm, moonlit. But Evan's cabin. It glowed faintly. Not bright. Not colorful. Just a soft, almost invisible white glow leaking through the cracks between the boards. As if light was coming from inside the walls. Karen's heart thumped. She grabbed her binoculars. Evan was outside, wearing gloves and talking to the same 3 specialists from earlier. They were checking something near the lake's edge. They lowered a device into the water. The device beeped softly. Karen pressed her face against the window. What are they doing to the lake? She whispered. Then Evan lifted his head slowly. Again, he looked directly toward Karen's house. Directly at her window. Directly into her eyes. Even though she was far away, behind curtains, and in the dark. She jerked back in terror. It felt like he could see in the dark. It felt like he knew she was there. It felt like he expected her. A secret discovery. The next morning, the entire town heard a strange noise, metal scraping, wood cracking, something heavy being moved. Curious people walked toward the lake. Karen, of course, was first. Evan and the specialists were lifting the old cabin's foundation. It tilted slowly, revealing something underneath, something dark and square. Is that a door? Someone gasped. Indeed, it was. A hidden trapdoor buried under the cabin. Evan brushed off dirt from its surface. There were old symbols carved into the wood. Forgotten markings. Maybe from the original builders. Karen felt lightheaded. What are you unlocking? She demanded. Evan looked at her with that same unreadable calm. History, he said. And opportunity. Then he lifted the trapdoor, and everyone leaned forward. But Evan stepped inside alone and closed the door behind him. Leaving the entire town confused. Leaving Karen furious.
and leaving 1,000 new questions hanging in the air. One thing was clear. Whatever Evan was building, it was only getting stranger. And Karen was not ready for what came next. For the next 2 days, Willow Ridge felt different. People talked less. They walked slower. They kept looking toward the lake, or more specifically, toward Evan's cabin, like they expected something unbelievable to happen at any moment. The discovery of the hidden trapdoor had shaken the whole town. Nobody knew what was inside. Nobody knew why Evan had gone in alone. And nobody knew why he wasn't answering any questions. He didn't explain. He didn't brag. He didn't even mention it. He just came out the next morning, closed the trapdoor again, locked it with a strange metal latch, and kept working like nothing unusual had happened. But something had changed. His attitude. His speed. His focus. Now, he moved with even more confidence, like he had found the missing piece of a puzzle he had been solving for years. And Karen? She was done being patient. Karen's upset meeting. On the third morning, she called an emergency HOA meeting. Only 5 people showed up, mostly her loyal followers who were scared of her, but she acted like it was a national crisis. She slammed her notebook on the table. "This man," she said dramatically, "is a threat to our community." The small group blinked at her. "A threat?" asked Mr. Lewis softly. "He's just fixing a cabin." Karen glared at him. "Fixing? Fixing? He is digging under the ground. He is bringing mysterious workers. He is hiding things. He has equipment no normal person owns." And she leaned forward. "He found a trapdoor." The group gasped, even though they all already knew. Mrs. Harris fiddled with her glasses. "Karen, what exactly do you want us to do?" Karen stood tall like a general preparing for battle. "We will stop him." The group looked nervous. "How?" someone whispered. Karen smiled. A sharp, dangerous smile. "With rules," she said. "The HOA rules can break anyone." A flood of letters. That afternoon, Evan received not 1, not 2, but 4 HOA letters. Letter 1, improper lawn maintenance. Letter 2, suspicious late-night activity. Letter 3, unauthorized construction materials. Letter 4, possible environmental disturbance. Evan read all 4 calmly. Karen watched from behind a tree, waiting for him to panic. He didn't. He just placed the letters in a neat stack on a table and went back to work. Karen stomped her foot angrily. The return of the specialists. Later that evening, the gray jacket specialists returned, but this time, they weren't scanning or measuring. They carried heavy equipment boxes with blinking lights, metal tubes, solar panels, and something that looked like a portable generator. One of them rolled out a long cable straight into the trapdoor. Karen took so many pictures her phone overheated. "What is he powering down there?" she whispered. "What is he building?" Evan noticed her, lifted his hand, and waved politely. Karen almost dropped her phone. Why was he so calm? Why was he not scared of being watched? She had controlled this neighborhood for 10 years. People usually hid from her. They apologized. They obeyed. But Evan looked like he was 3 steps ahead of her. The strange noise returns. That night, the strange low vibration returned, stronger than before. The ground trembled softly, like something deep in the earth was waking up. Lights flickered across the lake. A soft bluish glow rose from behind the cabin. People came out of their houses, whispering in confusion. What is happening? Is it safe? Is he drilling something? Karen grabbed her robe and stormed toward the lake, ignoring the whispers around her. The glow was coming from the trapdoor. The old wooden edges looked almost transparent, shining from the inside. Evan stood nearby with the specialists, checking readings on their devices. Karen marched up to him. "What," she demanded, "are you doing?" Evan turned slowly, calmly. "Improving the property," he said. "Lies. Karen shouted. You are breaking every rule in this community. Evan didn't flinch. He simply said, Karen, everything I'm doing is legal. Karen's face twisted. Not under MY rules.
Evan looked at her with quiet confidence. Karen, this land, my land, was never under HOA control.
She froze. What did you say?
The cabin sits on an old section of the lakefront, he explained.
It's outside of your jurisdiction. Karen felt the world tilt. No, that can't be true. That land is part of the Ridgewood HOA. It has to be.
But Evan just shook his head.
I've checked the old maps.
The county records.
The boundaries. He paused.
You have no power here. The specialists watched silently.
The lake was silent.
Even the wind was silent. Karen felt like her chest was collapsing.
Karen's breaking point. Karen walked back home in a daze. Her hands shook. Her breathing was loud and fast. No power? No control? No authority? Impossible. Unacceptable. Unthinkable. She refused to allow it.
She sat at her dining table, surrounded by HOA rulebooks, old maps, and her notebook full of angry scribbles. She threw papers everywhere, looking for anything she could use against Evan. Then, she found something.
An old HOA rule rarely used, almost forgotten. Rule 18b. Any construction or renovation that alters the lake view for neighbors must be approved by the HOA. Karen gasped. She grabbed the rulebook. Her hands shook with excitement. If I can't control his land, I can control the view.
She smiled slowly. A cold, dangerous smile.
He thinks he's clever, but this is MY Lake. My community.
She slammed the book shut. And I will stop him even if I have to destroy everything he's building.
Evan's mysterious meeting.
But while Karen planned her attack, Evan was preparing something else entirely.
That night, a black car arrived at the cabin.
A tall man in a suit stepped out. He carried a briefcase. He walked directly to Evan and shook his hand firmly. From her window, Karen saw everything.
Who is that? She whispered. The suited man handed Evan a document. Evan opened it. He nodded.
Then they both looked toward the lake as if discussing something serious, something big, something that had nothing to do with cabins or renovations.
Karen felt fear crawl up her spine.
What has he uncovered? She whispered.
What is he planning? She didn't know it yet.
But Evan's project had just reached a new level. And she was about to face a battle she had never imagined. The next morning, Willow Ridge woke up to chaos.
Not loud chaos. Not shouting or alarms.
But the kind of chaos that comes when something impossible is happening right in front of your eyes. Because when the sun rose, something huge stood beside Evan's cabin.
A crane. Not a small one. Not a rental.
A massive, industrial, city-level crane, the type used to lift entire buildings. People stared from their porches in disbelief.
Where did that come from? How did he get permission? Is he building a hotel?
The crane operator waved casually at Evan, as if they had been partners for years.
Karen, however, was speechless.
She marched toward the lake, her slippers slapping against the pavement, her hair still messy from sleep.
What is the meaning of this? She shrieked. Evan didn't answer at first. He simply studied a blueprint with two engineers.
When he finally looked at Karen, he smiled politely.
Good morning. Good morning? Karen exploded. You brought a crane into this community. A crane.
Evan shrugged lightly.
It was necessary. For what? For destroying the neighborhood?
Evan folded the blueprint calmly.
For building something better. Karen's jaw dropped. Better? Better? You're ruining the entire lake. But Evan was already walking away, talking to the engineers again. And then, as if the day wasn't strange enough,
3 drones flew over the cabin, scanning the air and ground with soft buzzing sounds.
Karen screamed.
People stepped outside just to watch her reaction.
The first big move.
The crane hooked its cables around the old cabin walls.
For decades, the cabin had stood crooked and weak. Now, with a loud creak, the entire structure lifted off the ground like a toy. People gasped. He's removing the whole cabin. He's replacing everything. Is he building a mansion?
But Karen saw something else, something that terrified her. Beneath the lifted cabin, the soil had been cleared and reinforced.
Steel beams lined the foundation.
Pipes and cables ran neatly underground.
Everything looked professionally planned. This wasn't a repair. This wasn't a renovation. This was a full-scale transformation. Karen whispered, "No, no, 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 this can't be happening." But it was. Evan's property was being reborn.
The lakefront becomes a worksite.
Within hours, a parade of trucks and equipment arrived. Concrete trucks. Glass panel trucks. Landscaping vehicles. A surveying drone team. Even a portable office trailer.
Workers moved like a coordinated army. No shouting, no confusion, just fast, confident work.
One group leveled the ground.
Another installed new support beams.
Another started laying a long wooden platform over the water. Karen's eyes widened. A dock? A huge dock? That's illegal.
She stormed toward Evan.
You cannot build a dock without HOA approval. Evan turned calmly. This land isn't under HOA jurisdiction. Karen's eye twitched. The view is. Rule 18b. You are changing the lake view for neighbors. Evan nodded slowly. Yes. I expected that.
He handed her a document. Karen snatched it, ready to tear it apart with her words. But when she opened it, her face turned pale.
What is this?
It's the county's approval, Evan said gently. They reviewed my design last week.
They classified the project as an environmental improvement. Karen blinked, confused. Environmental, what? Evan smiled. I'm restoring the lakefront. Making it cleaner. Stronger. Safer. Karen was too shocked to speak.
Your HOA rule, Evan added, cannot override a county-approved environmental project.
Karen felt like she might faint. The glass walls rise. By afternoon, something breathtaking began.
Tall, transparent panels, beautiful glass from edge to edge, were lifted by the crane and anchored onto the steel frame.
Each panel caught the sunlight and reflected the water like a mirror. People gasped and whispered. This is incredible. It looks like a luxury retreat. I've never seen anything like this. Karen covered her mouth. The tiny $5 cabin was becoming a stunning modern lake estate.
She stumbled backward, dizzy.
The hidden room.
While workers focused on the main building, Evan and 2 specialists returned to the trapdoor. Karen rushed closer, trying to listen.
Evan opened the trapdoor quietly.
He went inside again, this time carrying a metal case. Lights from below glowed softly through the cracks.
Karen leaned so far forward she nearly fell into a bush.
When Evan came out, he locked the trapdoor again, but this time, he placed a new metal plate over it.
The plate had symbols on it. Strange ones. They looked old. Ancient even. What are those symbols? Someone whispered. I've never seen writing like that. Karen felt cold. She wrote in her notebook. Secret base? Ancient map? Treasure? Illegal activities?
She didn't know which idea scared her more.
The landscaping shock. The next morning, trucks delivered huge trees, tall, expensive, rare.
Workers installed elegant stone paths. A waterfall feature was built beside the new deck. Everything looked like it belonged in a luxury resort brochure.
Karen couldn't believe this was happening. Not here. Not in her neighborhood.
This is madness, she whispered.
He's turning the lake into a tourist spot.
But in truth, Evan hadn't invited a single outsider. He just worked.
Focused. Silent. Steady. Like a man following a plan older than he was. Karen's desperate decision.
That night, Karen sat at her dining table again, surrounded by papers, maps, and coffee cups. She had lost control.
Evan was winning. Her power was disappearing. She whispered to herself. He thinks the county saved him. But there is one thing he doesn't know. She pulled out a dusty folder labeled HOA Archive Original Lake Rights. Her hands trembled.
Inside were documents about lake ownership.
Old ones. Confusing ones. Barely readable.
But one line made Karen gasp. All lakefront water access must be used in a manner consistent with the interests of the community board.
Karen grinned slowly. He built a dock. Over water.
That the HOA still has partial rights to.
Her grin widened. I can still take everything from him.
She stood up with new fire in her eyes.
The war wasn't over. It was just beginning.
For a week straight, Willow Ridge turned into a construction wonderland. Evan's once tiny $5 cabin now stood tall, shining with glass walls, metal frames, and elegant lines that looked like something out of a luxury magazine.
The dock stretched into the lake like a silver walkway.
People visited from nearby towns just to stare.
But Evan didn't brag. He didn't give tours. He didn't explain anything. He stayed quiet. Too quiet.
And that bothered everyone, especially Karen, who was determined to find a weakness.
She watched day and night. She wrote notes.
She searched old HOA documents. She even tried talking to the workers, but they always said,
"Sorry, ma'am. We can't discuss the project."
This made Karen furious. How is it possible, she shouted in her kitchen one morning, that everyone knows what he's doing, except me?
But in truth, no one knew. Not even the workers. They only followed Evan's designs.
Evan was the only one who understood the full plan.
And soon, everyone would learn why. The grand opening invitation. One evening, a black car pulled up to every house in Willow Ridge.
A driver stepped out and delivered a letter to each door.
Karen opened hers first. It read, "You are invited to the lakefront estate opening. Saturday at sunset." Karen almost tore the paper in half. He's having a party? To celebrate breaking my rules?
But what shocked her most was the last line.
A community announcement will be made. Karen froze. What announcement? About what? Was he planning to embarrass her? Was he going to reveal something about the trapdoor? The secret room? The strange workers? She couldn't sleep that night.
Her mind kept spinning.
The sunset gathering. Saturday arrived.
As the sun dipped behind the trees, golden light spread across the lake.
A large crowd gathered at Evan's property. Everyone murmured in awe. The house was finished. It didn't look like a cabin anymore.
It looked like a $5 million art piece, smooth glass, warm lights, and stone pathways lit with tiny lanterns. Evan walked out slowly, wearing a simple shirt and jacket.
No fancy clothes. No rich man attitude. Just the same calm man he always was. He stepped onto the wooden platform by the lake. "Thank you for coming," he said softly. "I know you've had many questions."
Karen crossed her arms tightly.
Finally, she whispered, "He'll have to explain." The crowd grew quiet. Evan took a deep breath. And then, he told the truth. The hidden past.
"I bought this cabin for $5, Evan began, not because it was cheap, but because it was the key to something important."
People leaned forward.
This cabin, he continued, belonged to my grandfather. A wave of surprise moved through the crowd.
Evan nodded.
He built the first version of this house long before any HOA existed. Long before this town looked the way it does.
Karen frowned. She didn't like where this was going. My grandfather wasn't just a builder, Evan said.
He was an environmental architect. A designer who believed nature and homes should work together, not fight each other. He paused, looking at the lake. It was his dream to protect this lake.
The crowd murmured again.
To protect the land, Evan added, he hid something important under the cabin.
Something most people never knew existed. Karen stiffened. The trap door.
Everyone leaned closer.
What did he hide? Someone asked.
Evan took a small metal box from a table beside him. The same one Karen had seen him with on those midnight nights. My grandfather discovered the original lake maps, he said. Maps that showed how the land was meant to be preserved.
Maps that prove this section of the lakefront is independent land, not owned by the HOA.
Karen's face drained of color.
Evan opened the box.
Inside lay old, weathered papers tied with string and stamped with county symbols. These documents, he said, give full water rights to this property. They were lost for decades. I found them under the cabin, exactly where my grandfather hid them to protect the land. The crowd gasped.
Karen stepped forward, shaking. No. No. This can't be true. The HOA controls the lake. It always has.
Evan looked at her gently, almost sadly.
I'm sorry, Karen. But the HOA formed years after these rights were registered.
Your rules never applied here.
Karen staggered backward. People started whispering. He was legally right all along.
He had the original rights.
He wasn't hiding anything, he was restoring history. The real purpose.
Evan continued, pointing toward the glass house.
This estate isn't just a home. It's a research and conservation center.
My grandfather designed a system to clean the lake naturally.
I updated it using modern technology.
He gestured toward the dock.
That dock isn't just a dock.
It contains filters and pumps powered by solar panels.
It removes toxins from the water. It prevents erosion.
It restores the lake to its original health. The crowd gasped again.
And the symbols on the metal plate, someone asked. Evan smiled. Old coding my grandfather used.
They marked the location of his underground laboratory, the place where he studied the lake's natural patterns.
Karen felt her legs go weak. Everything she thought was suspicious was actually a gift to the community. Everything she tried to stop was helping the lake she claimed to protect. Everything she accused him of was legal, scientific, and good. The final blow. Evan finished calmly.
I brought this estate back to life for my grandfather's memory.
Not for money. Not for fame. For preservation. For the lake. For all of us. The crowd applauded. Some people even teared up. Karen stood there shaking, humiliated.
Then Evan said the final line, the one that crushed her completely.
And I hope the HOA can support the project.
Even though they don't have authority here, I want to work together.
It was polite. But everyone knew the truth. Evan didn't need the HOA. He never did.
He had won the battle long before Karen even started it. Karen slowly backed away, her eyes wet with anger and embarrassment.
Evan had revealed everything.
And now the whole town knew she'd been wrong all along. But deep inside, something darker grew in her mind.
A final plan. A last attempt. A desperate move. Because Karen was not done fighting. Not yet.
While the crowd clapped for Evan, one person was frozen in pure shock, Karen.
Her lips trembled. Her hands shook. Her mind raced in 100 directions. Evan had done the impossible. He proved she was wrong.
He proved the HOA had no power over his land.
He proved the old cabin was protected by history itself. And worst of all, everyone saw it. Neighbors who once praised Karen now avoided eye contact. Some whispered. Others took videos.
A few even laughed quietly, something no one ever dared to do around her before.
Karen felt her face burn with shame. She wasn't just embarrassed. She felt destroyed. But Karen was not the type of woman who accepted defeat. She didn't walk away. She didn't apologize.
Instead, her mind formed a new plan, one colder, darker, and more dangerous than anything she had tried before.
A night filled with anger.
That night, Karen paced around her kitchen like a storm trapped inside four walls. Her house was silent, except for the sound of her heavy footsteps.
How dare he, she growled. He embarrassed me. Me. The head of the HOA.
She slammed a drawer shut.
This is my community, not his. I built these rules. I kept this neighborhood perfect. And I will not let him change everything.
She marched to her office, pulled out the largest HOA binder, and flipped through page after page of rules. Something in here must work, she muttered.
Something must stop him. But nothing did. Evan's documents overpowered everything. The lake maps were older than the HOA.
The water rights were legally binding. The land was protected for environmental study. After an hour of searching, Karen slammed the binder shut. Fine, she whispered, eyes narrowing. If the HOA cannot stop him legally,
I will stop him another way.
Her voice grew cold.
By force. The anonymous phone calls.
The next morning, Karen began phase 1 of her desperate plan.
She waited until everyone left for work.
Then she picked up her phone. Her voice changed, calm, silent, unrecognizable. She called the county building department. Yes, hello, she said in a disguised tone. I would like to report a dangerous construction site at the lake.
The structure is unstable. It might collapse.
She hung up before they asked for details.
Then she called the environmental office. Yes, hello. I believe someone is damaging the lake ecosystem.
You should check it before it gets worse.
She hung up again.
Then she called the news station. I have a story, she said quietly.
A wealthy man building a secret project by the lake.
Very suspicious.
Very unsafe.
By noon, she made 8 anonymous complaints.
Her goal was simple. Make the authorities suspicious. Make the public confused. Make Evan look guilty again.
But she wasn't finished.
The late-night sabotage. That night, when the entire neighborhood slept, Karen put on dark clothes and sneaked out of her house.
She moved quietly across the yard, hiding behind bushes, her heartbeat loud in her ears.
She wasn't the sneaky type normally.
But anger had made her brave. Or foolish. She walked toward Evan's property.
The new glass walls glowed softly under the moonlight.
The dock lights flickered across the surface of the lake.
Everything looked peaceful. Too peaceful. Karen's eyes filled with rage. He made a mansion out of Lake.
She approached the side of the house, looking around for cameras.
She saw none. Or so she thought.
She reached into her bag and pulled out a small bottle full of thick, dark paint. Let's see how perfect your house looks after this, she whispered. She uncapped the bottle and raised her arm.
And that's when she heard it. Click. A small red light blinked in the darkness.
A security camera turned toward her.
Karen froze. Her heart pounded. She couldn't move.
Another camera shifted.
Then another.
All of them pointed directly at her.
Oh no, Karen whispered.
Before she could run, a spotlight clicked on, flooding the area with bright white light. Karen shielded her eyes.
And then,
a voice echoed from a small speaker near the door.
Karen? It was Evan. Soft. Calm. Shockingly polite. "Why are you on my property at midnight?" Karen panicked.
I was just checking the structure," she shouted.
"Yes. That's it. I was making sure everything was safe." The cameras recorded every word.
Evan spoke again, voice steady. "All entrances, windows, and docks are monitored 24/7.
Please step back from the building." Karen's breathing grew wild.
She ran faster than she ever had to, straight back into the woods, disappearing into the darkness.
But the damage was done. The cameras had captured everything. The official visit. The next morning, bright and early, several county vehicles arrived at Evan's property. Karen watched from her window with a smile. "Finally," she whispered. "Finally someone will stop him."
She walked outside pretending to be innocent, pretending she had nothing to do with this.
A county officer greeted Evan politely.
"Sir, we've received multiple anonymous complaints regarding your property."
Evan nodded. "I understand. You're welcome to inspect anything you need." Karen smirked behind them. But then,
the officer said something that drained the color from her face. "We also received footage from your security system showing a trespasser last night. We need to identify the suspect."
Karen's smile fell instantly.
Evan turned his head slowly.
Their eyes met. He didn't look angry. He didn't look scared. He simply looked disappointed. Karen swallowed hard. She suddenly realized.
Evan now held something more powerful than documents, or rules, or lake rights.
He had evidence.
Real, clear, undeniable evidence.
And for the first time ever, Karen felt fear. Karen felt something she hadn't felt in years. Fear. Not the angry kind she usually carried. Not the dramatic kind she used to control people.
This fear was cold, sharp, real. She stood frozen as the county officer spoke with Evan. "Sir, your cameras recorded a trespasser last night," the officer said.
"We need to review the footage and file a report." Karen's throat tightened.
Everyone in Willow Ridge slowly gathered around, curious about what was happening.
Most of them already knew the truth. Everyone had already heard the rumors. Someone tried to vandalize Evan's estate. Someone got caught on camera. Karen wished she could disappear. The footage review. The officer stepped inside Evan's estate.
Evan politely invited them in, calm as always.
Karen stayed outside, trembling. Her legs felt weak. The neighbors whispered behind her back. Wasn't Karen always picking fights?
She hated that estate.
You don't think she...
I mean, she is crazy enough.
Karen's cheeks burned. Minutes passed. Then Evan stepped outside again.
His expression was gentle, but serious.
The officer followed him.
And in the officer's hand was a tablet.
Karen's heart dropped.
The officer spoke clearly.
"We've watched the footage. The trespasser was wearing dark clothes and carrying a bottle of paint." Karen shook her head quickly. That doesn't mean it was me."
The officer continued. "The face was visible when the spotlight came on.
And the person shouted something that matched your voice." Karen staggered backward. Her voice. Her face. Her actions. Everything was caught.
The officer looked at her calmly.
"Ma'am, we need to talk." Karen's breaking point. Karen's chest tightened as the officer approached.
I was just checking the structure," she yelled.
"I told you. I was helping. I care about this lake more than anyone." Evan stayed quiet, watching her.
Karen pointed at him wildly.
"He's the problem,"
she screamed.
"He stole my authority. He embarrassed me. He destroyed the HOA rules. This is his fault."
Her voice cracked. The neighbors looked at her like she had lost her mind.
And maybe she had. Karen collapsed to her knees.
He ruined everything, she whispered. Everything I built, everything I controlled. She covered her face with her hands. For the first time ever, she looked small.
Not powerful. Not scary. Just broken. Evan's unexpected decision.
The county officer sighed and closed the tablet.
Ma'am, vandalism is a serious offense. Trespassing is too. The evidence is clear. Karen didn't move. She looked defeated, humiliated, and desperate. Everyone waited for Evan to deliver the final blow.
He had every right to press charges. Every right to punish her. Every right to get revenge.
But he didn't. Instead, Evan stepped forward slowly.
Officer, he said quietly, I won't be filing charges. The crowd gasped.
Karen looked up, confused. Evan continued. I don't want to destroy her life. I just want peace in this community. The officer raised an eyebrow. Are you sure? We have solid evidence. Yes, Evan said. I'm sure.
Karen stared at him, stunned. Why would he protect her?
After everything she had done? After all the trouble she caused? The final twist. Evan took a deep breath. There's something I didn't say during the opening night, he said. Something important. The crowd leaned in. Karen wiped her tears, waiting.
Evan gestured toward the lake. My grandfather's land rights, they include not just this cabin property, but 20 feet of shoreline extending on both sides.
Karen blinked.
Slowly, the meaning hit her. Her house was only 15 feet from the shoreline.
That meant. Evan continued gently. Your backyard, Karen, a portion of it actually falls on the protected land.
The neighbors gasped.
Karen's jaw dropped.
Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She had spent years telling Evan what he could or couldn't do.
And all this time,
part of her own property wasn't under HOA control either. She had no authority there.
No rule power. No control.
Evan looked at her kindly, not mocking her, not attacking her. My grandfather planned it this way, he said softly. He wanted the land to stay natural. He believed people should care for the lake, not fight over it.
Karen felt dizzy. All her years of strict rule-keeping.
And she didn't even know her own land situation.
It was the final twist.
The twist that broke the last piece of her ego.
The community decision.
The officer stepped forward.
If Evan isn't pressing charges, then we won't file criminal action, he said. But Karen, the community will need to review your HOA leadership.
The neighbors looked at each other.
One of them spoke. Karen, you've gone too far. Another nodded.
We trusted you, but this was wrong.
Another added. You tried to destroy someone's property. You lied to authorities. You bullied a neighbor. Karen looked around at all the faces. Faces she once controlled. Faces she once intimidated. Now they looked at her with disappointment. Finally, one neighbor said the words. We vote to remove Karen as HOA president.
Karen closed her eyes.
It was over. Her power. Her rules. Her empire. Gone. A new beginning. Weeks passed. Karen stepped down from the HOA.
She apologized to the community.
She even went to therapy for anger management. People slowly forgave her. Not because they forgot, but because Evan encouraged forgiveness.
He surprised everyone again because he let Karen visit the new environmental center. He showed her how the lake filters worked. He explained what his grandfather designed. And Karen, quiet, humbled, human, finally understood.
The lake wasn't a war zone.
The rules weren't weapons.
And authority meant nothing without kindness. One sunny afternoon, she approached Evan shyly.
I'm sorry, she said softly.
For everything. Evan smiled gently.
It's okay, he replied. Let's take care of the lake together. For the first time in her life.
Karen agreed. Final line for the video ending.
In the end, the woman who once laughed at a $5 cabin learned the biggest lesson of all. Respect grows stronger than control. And kindness wins more battles than rules.